You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Greetings, everyone. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily, episode 1561. Today's tip is an excerpt from the Show Jumping Show, one of the newer podcasts here on the Horse Radio Network. Co-hosts Kristy and Ashley offer us a great pacing exercise, and they do it in real time, so you can listen while you're cleaning stalls, or you can listen while you ride. And we'll get right to it after we hear from our sponsor, US Rider.
Even under the best circumstances, travel is stressful for horses. We've all been there, stuck on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. You can make the journey knowing that US Rider is there for you. Get peace of mind on the road with US Rider's nationwide 24/7 roadside assistance coverage for both you and your horse. Join today at usrider.org.
For our first episode, we wanted to focus on an exercise that is meant to understand and regulate pace, which, as we all know, is the basis for any riding that we do. This exercise can be done in real time, so I will explain the setup, and then following, I'll explain what to do while on the horse, which, if you'd like to listen as you ride, we can do this together. For your ring setup, we are going to place 2 poles that are opposite each other as if they were on a clock at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. You're also going to place 1 standard at 12 o'clock and 1 standard at 6 o'clock. If your ring is oval shaped, you can use your entire ring. If you have a large area that you'd like to condense, you can use a circle that gives you about 10 to 12 strides between each obstacle. So between the pole on the ground to the next standard, if you were cantering in a circle, you'd have 12 strides to have completed between those two. And then the same follows to the next pole, the next standard, and then the pole again. So go ahead and set that up, and then we'll come back and you can follow along with what to do while riding. While you're on your horse, your first job is to establish what kind of pace you have and how that's different between each gait. So we're going to use miles per hour, but they are not exact. They don't mean 1, 2, 3 exact miles per hour. They're just a frame of reference to remember as you're moving along on your horse. So to start at the walk, we're going to imagine that that's 1 mile per hour, and just organize your horse enough that you have a moving forward walk that has some intention and some impulsion. That's going to be called 1 mile per hour. Move forward through each gait and give each gait a number that you can clearly define. So as you move forward from the walk into the collected sitting trot, that would be 2 to 3 miles per hour. Again, the number and the mile per hour don't matter. What matters is you are defining what pace you're on. Working trot generally is up to 4 to 5 miles per hour. Working trot then needs to be established and maintained so that you know that your horse is on the same pace each time you go around the ring. Part of learning how to regulate pace is learning how to understand what pace you're on and how to maintain it. As you move forward into the extended trot, you're going to be at approximately 6 miles per hour. Work on that extended trot, and again, holding it. Usually when we move forward, we like to accelerate and then take our leg off. So the horse may go forward into the extended trot, but in order to maintain it, you've got to keep your leg on and make sure that they're following your aids and staying at that pace. Once you've established the different paces at the trot and you understand which number correlates to them, again, as your own horse has its pace to dictate going forward, you can start to move into the canter. The collected canter, I like to call 7 miles an hour. That's generally a canter where you're organized. It's a shortened stride. It is not the pace you would use to go to a hunter line or a jumper line on course. It is the pace you would use to land and collect and slow down before you go into the next turn. That's approximately 7 miles per hour. Once you pick up your canter, try to get to where your horse is underneath you, collected in hand, and at a pace where you can extend from. Extending from collected canter moves into working canter. This is your most important canter, and you're able to establish it and hold it all the way around the course. We'll talk about how to make adjustments from 8 miles an hour. That's, again, working canter, 8 miles an hour. As a frame of reference, this is your go-to canter. You'd really love to make sure that you start and finish your course at this pace. Extended canter, generally 9 miles an hour, where your horse is really moving forward from your leg. You're still in control. This would be a canter that you use when you see a distance to move up to. If you're coming out of the corner at 8 miles an hour and you see a forward distance, add your leg, move your horse forward, and get to 9 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour is out of the tack at a hand gallop. This is, again, still in control, but the fastest that you'd like to go. If you're working on your jump off speed, this is 10 miles an hour, where you're moving your horse as forward as it can go while keeping control of your stride. For this exercise, practice on the flat, not worrying about any of the setup that you've done in the ring with the poles or the standards, but just establishing where each pace lies and how to recognize what you're on. The numbers are only for recognition. Don't worry again if they are exact at all. Worry that each time that you're at 8 miles an hour, it is a true working canter. Once you've tracked your own pace, start to incorporate the 2 poles on the ground. If you are cantering on the left lead, going counterclockwise, you'll be cantering over the pole at 3 miles an hour at 3 o'clock. Go around the standard that you have at 12 o'clock and canter over the pole that's at 9 o'clock. Around the next standard at 6 o'clock and canter over the pole that's at 3 o'clock. So you're essentially making a lap around the ring and cantering each pole as you are coming out of each corner. Make these poles work at 8 miles an hour to start. Try to understand where your canter is as you're approaching the pole. You can make adjustments to slow down to fit the distance in or speed up to make the distance closer to the pole if it's moving forward, but really try to work on establishing and maintaining 8 miles an hour. 8 miles an hour, again, working canter. Once you've figured out how that working canter can be maintained, then start to add in your transitions. So if we were cantering a course and approaching a jump at 8 miles an hour, every time you land from a line or a jump, you want to organize your horse's balance. That's getting to 7 miles an hour. So you're really going from working canter to collected canter after the pole. The idea in this exercise is to use the poles and the standards for when to ask for those transitions. Once you've cantered over the first pole, again at 3 o'clock, land and use any space you have from the pole to the standard to get to 7 miles an hour or collected canter. That's your landing time. That's your recovery time. And that is usually the time that most riders waste time when they're trying to get back in the saddle, when they cut the corner, when their horse knows that they're turning and they turn too early. It's really important to use as much space as possible so you have the most time to recover and get back to 7 miles an hour. Most horses land from a jump and tend to speed up. Most horses land and try to cut in early. So by the time you get to that standard at 12 o'clock, you're too fast and you're on a track that has really put you closer to the end of the ring than you want to be. So as much time as you can take between the pole and the standard is important. The next step is after you cross the standard or after you pass it, put your leg immediately back on and get back to 8 miles an hour. There's your time to move up. Note that this is before you're out of the turn. If it's at a true 12 o'clock point in your ring, you still should have at least 3 or 4 strides to move across the short end of the ring or the short end of the turn to establish that 8 miles an hour. Because by the time you are straight and trying to approach the next pole, which is your next obstacle, the 9 o'clock pole, then you want to be at that 8 miles an hour. You have the most options when you are in that working canter. You can collect and get to 7 miles an hour to fit the distance in, or you can move up to 9 miles an hour or extended canter for a forward distance. So again, you're landing from the pole over at 3 o'clock, collecting to 7 miles an hour or collected canter until the top end of the ring where you pass that standard. Then you're switching gears and moving back up to 8 miles an hour so you can approach the pole with the most options for your distance. Pace is the very first thing that dictates distance. And if you don't have any pace or you don't have the correct pace, you are really going to be struggling to find any distance. Same pattern at this end of the ring. When you land from that pole, now you're working down to the 6 o'clock standard. Use all of the space you have to collect into 7 miles an hour or collected canter. That means, again, going straight after the pole, slowing down. Inside leg keeps your horse from cutting in. Both reins keep your horse straight as long as you can through that turn. Some horses can collect very easily and quickly, but others might take that entire time. Use as much space as you have. The earlier you get this part of the exercise done, the easier the second part of the exercise will be. So this is just that pattern. Crossing the standard means moving up to 8 miles an hour to the pole. Landing from the pole means slowing down to 7 miles an hour. That's your basic exercise. Once you've established it to the left, land, walk, readdress your speed once you've changed direction, and then approach each of those poles. As you complete this exercise successfully, you can add in different speeds to the pole. Practice going from 7 miles an hour to 9 miles an hour as if you were actively trying to move up to the next jump. Perhaps the line in the ring is forward. Perhaps you're coming to a triple bar. Perhaps you're trying to be efficient and in a jump off where you can leave out the number of strides from the turn. You can use 9 miles an hour to address that pace and approach the pole with the intention of a moving up forward distance. When you have a pace that you know that you're on, that can tell you what kind of distance you'll get to. A second way to do this is to practice once you've recovered from 7 miles an hour to keep that collected canter and get to the next jump or the next pole in a waiting slow distance. Maybe the next line is very collected. Maybe you have a skinny jump coming up. Maybe you have a combination that requires extra balance from your horse. You don't want to approach that with too much pace. So you'd like to come in a bit slower and wait for that distance coming out of the turn. Again, this is referencing your pace in order to dictate your distance. Moving through all of these circles at different speeds primarily means being aware of what canter you're on and using that to find the pole as you're coming out of the corner. Once you've completed this on a circle, you can stop, take another pole out, and line it up with either of the sides of the ring. So you're now going to have a line of poles, which could be anywhere from 5 strides apart to 12 strides apart. The number of strides doesn't matter, but what does matter is the pace you come in on should be the same pace that you leave on. Once you've established whatever pace it is that you need into the line of poles, try to maintain that as you come out of the pole and count the number of strides. So if you're on working canter and you have cantered over the first pole, just stay on working canter and see how many strides that takes you to get out of the line. Let's say it's 7. Once you've done that, you know that 7 strides in the line is 8 miles an hour. Now, as you're coming around that corner from the standard forward into 9 miles an hour, you want to do 6 strides in that line. If 7 strides in a line is your working canter, your extended canter will be 6 strides. Come forward, move forward as you approach the pole and away from it. And then when you land from the second pole, slow back down and get to your collected 7 miles an hour. So you can extend this exercise as according to the size of your ring and the amount of time you have between the two poles to make sure that you're practicing not only over a single pole, but over a line.
Kristy, I absolutely love this exercise on pace, especially with the visuals. What else is important for dictating distance?
Pace is definitely the first element in dictating distance, but track is second. So next week, we'll have an exercise where we work on defining your track and understanding what changes you can make to help stay in on your line, stay out on your line, and just improve your track in general so your distance comes up the way you'd like to.
Now, the gals on the Show Jumping podcast have a tip in every single episode. If you would like to get them all, you can subscribe to the Show Jumping podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Well, there you have it. Horse Radio Network has thousands of engaging podcasts for horse people, and you can have them sent right to your phone. Just subscribe via your favorite podcast player. This is Coach Jen, and I will be back again soon with another tip. Until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.